Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This episode, we'll be talking the U.S. men's national team, Wrexham, Gio, Weston, Club World Cup, the Sinner, Copa América, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you doing on this Monday, January 30th of the year 2023?
I am doing well. 5 years ago, around this time, you and I did our first podcast together. It was the week of the Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl. Here we are, 5 years later, the Philadelphia Eagles back in the Super Bowl. They will face the Kansas City Chiefs on Fox.
On Fox, big Super Bowl coming up. I can't believe it's been 5 years, my friend. It just goes by like that. But we've had a wonderful time, and we thank everybody for joining us. If you've just joined us, great. If you've been around for 5 years, that's even better. Now, the football. I watched the football this Sunday, both of the games, and I come to see, in the Twitter sphere and the social media thing where everything evidently is decided. That the refereeing in the NFL is not up to snuff. Is that true? Is that the right type of outrage and narrative to have right now?
I rode the elevator with a security person, and we struck up a conversation about the Chiefs-Bengals AFC title game, and he felt like the Bengals got absolutely hosed. Several calls he disagreed with throughout the game, although he did say the late hit at the end of Mahomes was the correct call.
It's absolutely the correct call.
Right.
All right. I watched that, and I don't know a whole lot about football, but even I know that you're not supposed to do that. And, part of me feels bad for the guy. I mean, he was crying after the game, and his teammate had to run the press conference for him and deem what was appropriate and not appropriate in terms of a question. Come on, man, this is football. You made a mistake. You're a professional. You make millions and millions of dollars playing a stupid game. Stand up, and say, "Yeah, I made a mistake," and go golf. Did you watch anything?
This was the weekend when I finally went down the Wrexham rabbit hole.
Ooh.
The brouhaha on Twitter.
It got you. It got you. Hook, line, and sinker, my friend.
Finally compelled me to binge the documentary series, Welcome to Wrexham. I watched all 18 episodes, and I watched their match on Sunday. We're going to talk about that later on in the podcast.
And Wrexham in general. I have not watched yet. What's it on, by the way? Hulu Plus? Is that what is it on? I think. What did you watch?
Yes, Hulu. I actually purchased it on Amazon Prime.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't have Hulu. There's only so many that I can have. So I don't have that yet. I have not watched it yet. But I will watch it because of the soccer connection and stuff like that. But I do have thoughts on Wrexham even without having watched it. So all right, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. I have though been watching, and it's a series that came out a few years ago called The Sinner, and what year did it come out? Let's see here. Yeah, back in 2017 to 21. Anyway, it's 4 seasons, and it stars the great Bill Pullman. Jessica Biel appears in one. It's 4 different seasons, and each season is completely different, although it features the same detective. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I never heard of it, and I just kind of clicked on it, and thankfully it was started and finished. And so I recommend it highly. It's really an interesting look to this. It's nothing new in terms of a detective who has, scars and emotional scars and physical scars for that matter, solving cases, and you care as much about him and his problems and flaws as you do about the actual case. But very well done. So that's the one that I recommend. I give that a thumbs up. All right, shall we light this candle?
Let's do it.
All right, well, let's start with the second of the 2 games that the U.S. men's national team played in this January camp. Affectionately, often called Camp Cupcake. It is, as we know, an opportunity to see new, less experienced, oftentimes young talent when it comes to the U.S. That it's happening in a moment of flux and craziness doesn't help it. It's always kind of looked down on to a certain extent. I don't know how much we gleaned after these two games, and certainly the game against Colombia, by the way, in a sold-out Dignity Health, although there was 90%. Our friend Stu Holden was at the game, and producer Sean was at the game. And thanks for Sean for sporting the colors, the USA, because they were vastly outnumbered by the Colombians. A lot of yellow, but the U.S. does get a point in that. What has to be said is a adversarial type of position and environment there. So I guess congratulations. Although that second game against Colombia, we already talked about the first game of that second game against Colombia. First half was okay, and then it just kind of petered out into a blah type of experience for probably if you're at the stadium and certainly when you're watching at home.
I found the starting lineup quite boring. When you have Sean Johnson in goal, Walker Zimmerman and Aaron Long at the back, Kellen Acosta in the midfield, Paul Arriola and Jesus Ferreira in the attack. For a January friendly, that's a lot of I know what you are, I don't care what you do in this game, guys. There were a few youngsters sprinkled in, the fullbacks, Jones, Tolkien. You had Matthew Hoppe up there, and then they brought on some guys in the second half I was interested in, like Vasquez and Jalen Neal. But you know what I mean? At the start of the game, you look at that lineup and you say, boy, this isn't really what these January friendlies are supposed to be about.
Well, if the January friendlies are indeed about identifying and cultivating that next group that you think is going to help you from a national perspective with the national team, then yes, absolutely, to your point. I'm not learning anything about Sean Johnson or Aaron Long or Walker Zimmerman, and the list goes on. I am learning things about others, but here's the question, Mosse, and this is what I started thinking about this weekend, is what do I want the national team to represent? What do I want that moment to represent? We are at a time that is completely different than when I was coming up, okay? We have opportunities and pathways and platforms from which we can assess players, the likes of which we never saw when I was growing up. And so there's a part of me that thinks about and watched this game and these games, and almost, and I guess it's just a part of me, but a part of me feels like the national team experience and the privilege and the honor and the responsibility of representing what I feel is the greatest country in the world has been kind of diluted and cheapened. And so when I see players that have yet to even do anything on the field when it comes to a club level, or very little on the field when it comes to a club level, being put in these incredible moments of opportunity, I don't know, there's something about it. But I do recognize how you need to be, if you're a national team program, looking towards the future. I just think that, it's Oprah. You get a cap, and you get a cap, and you get a cap, and you get a cap. And that rubs me the wrong way.
Hercules Gomez had a tweet. He said it's become far too easy to get a U.S. national team call-up. So you agree with that sentiment?
I do agree to it, but there's the other part of me that recognizes that until they get on the field with the national team, you don't know what they are. And again, what you are as a club player can be very, very different, and form is fallacy and all that kind of stuff. So until you actually put them on the field, you don't know. And I guess this is that perfect opportunity to do it, which goes back to what we started talking about, why do I need to see players that I already know what they are? Sean Johnson is going to be, he's 33 years old right now. So he's going to be 36, 37 years old ultimately. Now, for a goalkeeper, that's fine, but he's going to play the role of, Tony Meola in 2002. For just a guy that's not going to cause problems, got great experience, has a voice and a leadership role, but is not going to ultimately play going forward. Slonina, if he is ultimately the future of the national team goalkeeping position, then get him as much time on the field as possible. But then there's that other part of me that says, well, Sean Johnson is a member of the national team, and don't just give it out like candy when it comes to a national team cap.
I mentioned Matthew Hoppe. I'm not sure how interested I am in him either. It might be that he's better on the wing than as a center forward, but there's a much greater need at center forward. On the wing, there are so many players that I consider to be better than him that I can't imagine him ever becoming a big factor there. Do you agree that when you see Hoppe on the wing, it kind of seems like, what's the point?
If Matthew Hoppe was playing in MLS, he would not be called into the national team. Okay, and again, this is not right or wrong. It's just the reality of the situation, and your cachet is increased, and your reputation is enhanced by where you play. And so Matthew Hoppe is not good enough. Okay, I'm not saying he's not a good player, and I'm not saying he didn't have some great moments in the past, but I just don't see him as being good enough yet. He's still 21 years old for the U.S. men's national team going forward. And to your point, maybe it's a positional type of thing. So again, we go through this. I think Slonina did well and showed that he deserves to continue to be an option going forward into these camps. Gressel showed that he's a really good crosser of the ball, and you want that. We have plenty of wide players, maybe none that can do it from that deep-lying position that he can, so that's a good thing for him. Whatever you think about Walker Zimmerman, it didn't change after this camp. Whatever you think about Aaron Long, it didn't change with this camp. The Jalen Neal thing, 19 years old, never actually played a single game for the Galaxy first team, and now he's a U.S. international. I'm not saying that he's not potentially going to be a very good player, but again, you've just given him something that has he earned it? And I know he's played for youth national teams and all that, but where we now have that ability to have a player play on a consistent basis that we can assess them in with Major League Soccer and with USL and with all the different leagues that we have right now. So we don't need to be just taking a flyer on a player. So, and that's nothing against Jalen Neal. If I got the call, I would be happy and I would take it too. And now his image is enhanced. And maybe he goes on to star for the Galaxy going forward. But it's just a little weird. Paxton Erickson, we talked about. Paxton Pomacol, not quite good enough. I didn't think that Eric Williamson really shone in the way that he can. And again, that injury really screwed him up. Not saying he can't be the player that I think a lot of people feel he can be, but this wasn't. And by the way, nobody really shone in that game. I think Brandon Vasquez comes out of this camp showing that he is absolutely one. And to your point again, that position of need, it's going to lend itself to saying, hey, you come in, you scored a goal, you're dangerous, you're getting shots on net, you provide an aerial presence and a real danger up top that the U.S. just hasn't had. When we see Jesus Ferreira running around, really, Ferreira hasn't recaptured that moment of awesomeness, if you will, that he had. And, that's a problem for him and obviously a problem for the national team if they don't have somebody coming along. And that's why Brandon Vasquez really, I think, shines and comes out of this camp, as does Kay Cal.
Luke Wildman, in discussing the series history, he mentioned that the most famous encounter between the two countries came back at the 1994 World Cup. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, whenever you see the U.S. and Colombia on a field together, does your mind always harken back to that day?
It does. And we have a long history with Colombia. And actually, even leading up to the World Cup in 94, I think I mentioned this before, we played every one of our group opponents in the lead up to the World Cup. And Colombia multiple times we played them, both in tournament settings and in just one-off friendly. So we knew exactly what we were coming up against. So there's a wonderful history. And obviously, the Colombian, expats and fans there, they came out in force.
Had to be difficult for Melissa Ortiz. She's there ostensibly covering the U.S. national team, but she was clearly rooting for Colombia.
I think she was okay. I think she's a pro, so she worked through it, and everything was fine. By the way, in this day and age where we love to scream and yell about nepotism and connections and old boys and old girls network and there's DeMarcus Beasley, and there's Julie Foudy, and there's Kyle Martino, and there's even Melissa Ortiz, and all that kind of stuff. I only point it out because I think it's so ridiculous and absurd in and of itself. But if we're gonna do it, let's do it.
On the topic of the U.S. facing South American opposition, some big news. This has been talked about as a possibility for a long time. It's now official. The 2024 Copa América will be in the United States. It'll be a 16-team tournament featuring 10 CONMEBOL sides and 6 from CONCACAF, similar to the Copa América Centenario in 2016, which we covered. A lot of U.S. fans were hoping for this, and now it's going to happen. Very exciting, huh?
Oh, this is great. Yeah, I mean, people were talking about this, and it makes sense on the field from a competitive perspective, and off the field from a money perspective. It'll make a lot of money, and it'll give the United States a wonderful tournament with some very different and much better competition than they get oftentimes when they play against CONCACAF teams. And keep in mind, in 1993, the U.S. participated in Copa America. In 1995, the U.S. participated in Copa America. In 2016, the Copa America Centenario, which we broadcast and which was incredible, made a tremendous amount of money. The U.S. finished in 4th place in that tournament. That was great in terms of the development and the experience for those players. So this, I fail to see where any type of downside when it comes to something like this.
2 things I will say. I'm very glad it sounds like this will be the Copa America for this cycle. CONMEBOL isn't going to use this as a contrived excuse to jam another Copa America down our throats.
Yeah, you say that now. You never know.
Secondly, it makes perfect sense in this cycle for this tournament to take place in the United States because that's where the World Cup is, so everybody wants to prepare for that.
Yep.
But in future cycles, if the U.S. takes part in the Copa America, I don't think it should always have to be in the United States. I get the financial value of that, but you played in a Copa America in Uruguay in '95. That was a great experience. I think the U.S. could really benefit from taking part in Copa Americas in South America.
Yeah, so we did Uruguay in '95 and Ecuador in '93, and so yeah, it was a great experience, and so I absolutely agree, and I get from a financial perspective why it's good, and in this particular case, because of the '26 World Cup, teams want to be here and they want to get the lay of the land, they want to have an understanding of what it is if they don't already. So and keep in mind that Confederations Cup has gone away. So the ability for us, even with our existing infrastructure, to host a tournament, to get some things right, and especially for cities and markets that are hosting in 2026, I think that's I think it's huge. So well done, and thank you, I guess, to CONCACAF and CONMEBOL for coming together. That's not always easy. And this announcement wasn't just about Copa America. There was all sorts of other things, right, Mosse, that are part of what the cooperation and what's going to go on going forward.
Yeah, so we're also going to have a Women's Gold Cup in 2024, 12 teams, 8 from CONCACAF, 4 from South America. And there's going to be a club competition, 4 teams, 2 from CONMEBOL, 2 from CONCACAF. The details are a bit murky on that, but they're hoping to have it in 2024 as well. That's exciting also.
Yeah, I mean, people have long talked about the possibility of CONCACAF teams playing in CONMEBOL and Copa Lib, and that type of stuff, and having this interaction that we're seeing now from a national team perspective actually also happen on a club perspective and in a more formal setting. And again, this might just be the first time that we see, and so they want to start it small, and it might expand, who knows, going forward. But this is great to be able to possibly see CONCACAF teams, not possibly, to actually see CONCACAF teams against CONMEBOL teams that are from a club level and from a national team level. This is great because again, as much as I love CONCACAF, and as much as Victor Montagliani's responsibility is to all the 40-plus members of CONCACAF, the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, and the good and the bad, and the quality and the lack of quality, at times is dramatic. And you're wanting to help everybody and pull everybody up, but in the process, sometimes from a U.S. specific perspective, and I guess from a you could put Canada and Mexico perspective, you're not helping yourself. And so the more opportunity we get to play against better teams, and let's be honest, there's only 10 teams in CONMEBOL, and a lot of them are really good, and some of them are the best in the world. That's awesome, and it'll be great for the fans. It'll be great for the players.
You might recall in the 2016 Copa America Centenario, Argentina lost the final to Chile on penalties. Messi skied his attempt.
And then quit.
He then quit the national team right afterwards, but decided to come back, a decision that I think has worked out.
It's worked out okay. It's okay. I mean, sometimes in that moment, in that heated moment, you say and you do things that you come to regret. So we should recognize that. The Bengals of Cincinnati should recognize that.
Yes. 3 players that you would imagine would represent the U.S. in the 2024 Copa America, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, and Brenden Aaronson, are now set to be teammates at club level with Leeds United. This is not official yet, but it sounds like Weston McKennie is, in fact, headed to Leeds. The articles I've read, it sounds like Leeds are paying a 1.2 million euro loan fee to Juventus, and then they have an option to buy him permanently for 33 million euros. I don't think that's obligatory, so they'll have to make a decision on that at the end of the season, I guess. But I don't know. Once this becomes official, we'll know all the details more properly. You said in our previous podcast that you thought Weston was selling himself short. He's better than Leeds. Leeds fans on Twitter predictably did not take too kindly to that.
Wow, what a bunch of sensitive folks over there at Leeds, huh? Wow.
Now that it sounds like this is happening, do you want to double down on that take? Have you rethought it at all?
No, it does. It doesn't change, the take. However, the structure of this deal, I think, is beneficial to Weston. It's a loan. It's short term. I'm sure that he will have outs relative to if they are relegated, and so this can be a win for him to come in if he helps keep them up. Obviously, if they exercise that option, it's a wonderful fee, and if he enjoys it on and off the field, he can continue on. Or I still think there's going to be suitors, and probably more suitors come the summer. And so this is kind of the best possible scenario. But it doesn't change the fact that I think that Weston McKennie is too good for Leeds. And Leeds fans can scream and yell all they want, but that's just the reality. Who knows? Maybe Weston becomes the hero and takes them to that promised land, which is what is hopefully being set up here. Yeah, the people weren't happy about the people of Leeds, because sometimes we'll do this and it'll get out and it'll become viral, and obviously the Leeds fans were upset. They felt that I was being disrespectful. They brought you into the whole situation too, that we were being disrespectful from talking about Leeds like that. I know what Leeds is. I know what Leeds isn't. I know, the incredible history. Actually, Leeds was one of the first teams that I ever heard about in my 1970s, 80s, suburban America house. And, if it was able to cut through that and still get to me, then it even at that point still had a global value and some credibility. But, in today and coming to us in 2023, that's not what Leeds are. I recognize that there's a storied history, and a lot of fans love that team. But I think Weston's better.
Breaking news: as we were taping, reports popped up on Twitter that Manchester City might be interested in Anthony Robinson. They just loaned João Cancelo to Bayern Munich. That would be quite the move.
Well, I think that's commensurate with the type of player that he is. Weston's taking a step down, going to Leeds, and Anthony Robinson is taking a step up, going to Man City. But that's a proper club when you talk about Man City relative to Leeds.
We'll see if that actually happens. We're taping this on Monday morning. The January window closes tomorrow. We have another podcast on Wednesday. I'm planning on Wednesday to do a big January window roundup.
Yep.
Keeping an eye on this Arsenal Moises Caicedo story. Also, Chelsea trying to sign Enzo Fernandez for 120 million euros. My man Enzo, the winner of the James Rodriguez,
right?
Having a World Cup Inflate Your Value award. Also, Nottingham Forest, suddenly a destination for Brazilian players. They're trying to sign Brenner from FC Cincinnati.
Well, I mean, he had a good year, so sell him now. Sell him now.
A lot of MLS fans salty that Brenner is getting these kinds of offers and not Brandon Vasquez. They think it shows the bias in favor of Brazilian players and against Americans. The ownership out there, they want what they want. I mean, we just got done talking about the bias relative to Leeds and them buying up American players. So it works both ways. Although there's a long tradition and history of Brazilian players being overvalued and therefore much more attractive to people, either from a marketing perspective or just they're sexier. Also at Fox, believe me, there are way more qualified people than me to be doing this podcast. But being a Brazilian, I had some cachet.
Well, at least you've announced and accepted your privilege, and
yes.
we recognize it now. We can go on. You check that box.
So on Wednesday, we'll do a whole transfer window roundup. A pretty big move within MLS. Sean Johnson heads to Toronto, leaves NYCFC, where he was the 2021 MLS Cup MVP. Also had a great season last season, 14 shutouts. So Bob Bradley gets himself a veteran goalkeeper.
Well, first off, the whole concept of free agency is something that the players over the years have had to fight for and claw back. And so just when I see this, it does represent progress in that, certainly Sean Johnson, an MLS lifer, an incredible goalkeeper, and even at 33 years old, any team in the league would love to have Sean Johnson. That's how good that's how good he is. And so he should, given his service to the league and to the sport, have this opportunity. And he is utilizing that. From a Toronto perspective, I think it's a great pickup. Great pickup. So, Bob Bradley up there, I think this is an important big year for Bob Bradley and company at TFC. They got to get their what together, and having a solid goalkeeper like Sean Johnson there, that certainly helps.
And then one last MLS-related note, and we'll talk more about this on Wednesday, but this week the Club World Cup gets underway. The first game is on Wednesday. Egypt's Al Ahly faces New Zealand's Auckland City. The winner of that will then face the Seattle Sounders on Saturday. If Seattle were to win that game, they would take on a Spanish outfit called Real Madrid the following week in the semifinals.
Oh, I cannot wait. And by the way, you can watch all the Club World Cup action on FS2, right, Mosse?
Correct.
All right. So coming at you on FS2. I'm excited. The context and the storylines while we are watching CONCACAF Champions League are always about the carrot of representing CONCACAF in the Club World Cup. Well, for many years there wasn't an MLS representative, and got very, very close, and it never happened. And we watched Liga MX teams, for the most part, time and time again, represent our region. And now the Seattle Sounders, while they represent Major League Soccer, they represent CONCACAF. And that an MLS team is representing our region in this tournament. That's great, and that's wonderful. So good luck to the Seattle Sounders and Brian Schmetzer and company. I know that they have been eyeing this and focusing on this as a wonderful way to kind of start off their year. Although last year, starting off their year with CONCACAF Champions League and winning it didn't do them any help when it came to the actual league. So hopefully this is a different type of scenario. And this is just, they could be one and done, but hopefully they get that first game out, and then we see that game against Real Madrid, which is really the piece de resistance.
That is it.
All right, let's take another quick break, or our first quick break of the pod. And when we come back, we'll take a dive and a recap from around Europe. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. Hey, Mosse, did you see what happened in our break here? Everything's falling apart. Everything's falling apart. Our incredible set here, which, by the way, in a few weeks, we're actually going to have to transfer to a different set while this entire room gets made over. So we're upgrading big time here. But until that time, you see the panhandle down there? Yeah, if you can see it here online. It's not that we don't like Florida. It's not that we don't like the panhandle. As a matter of fact, I love Florida and I love the panhandle. But the actual panel has come out here. We had all sorts of people running around trying to fix it. We could not get it fixed. So if this is going to distract you as we continue on with the pod, I'm sorry. I apologize. But, these things happen. We will power through, right?
Yeah, the great John Marcus attempted to fix it to no avail.
If he can't fix it, then it can't be fixed, at least not right now.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So listen, all sorts of stuff going on over in Europe, including the cup games and the cups that continue on. So where do you want? Hey, Mosse, where do you want to start?
We're going to begin in England with the FA Cup fourth round. Actually going to do City Arsenal first. Let's take this in chronological order.
Oh, okay, fine. All right.
The fourth round got underway on Friday. Manchester City 1-0 winners over Arsenal at the Etihad. Nathan Ake with the only goal in the second half. A lot of discussion about whether this match would have any psychological impact on the Premier League title race. Had City demolished them, it might have, but that's not what happened at all. Arsenal actually played quite well in this game, despite the fact that City put out closer to a full-strength lineup. So City move on to the fifth round, but I think Arsenal come out of this still feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah, I mean, look, if that is the competition, and while it's relatively new competition to Man City, this is still the cream of the crop when it comes to Arsenal. And yes, we know that lineups are heavily rotated, especially for the elite super clubs, as both of these are, even if they're facing each other. The amount of times where I hear coaches, players, fans, pundits, I guess, if you will, say, well, yeah, but does this really matter? And I know that there's a lot of games. And, I always say when we talk about being on television, if you don't look like you're having fun, if you don't look like that it matters, then why should the viewer? And too often now, I think we're finding moments where people say, we lost a game, whatever. So I don't think that Arsenal cares a whole lot about. I don't think that Man City cares a whole lot about this result. Now, others attach great significance and meaning to it.
The big one on Sunday, Wrexham involved in a 3-3 draw against championship side Sheffield United at the legendary racecourse ground. Wrexham surrendered an equalizer in virtually the last kick of the game. So that tie will be decided in a replay. But there's a bigger conversation going on regarding this club, which we're going to have right now. A little background.
Sure.
Wrexham are a Welsh club. They compete in the 5th tier of English football. In 2020, actors Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney became the owners of the club. A documentary series aired on FX chronicling their arrival and the day-to-day inner workings of the club. That gave Wrexham notoriety in the United States. And ESPN, looking to seize on that, has really shined a light on their FA Cup games this season, putting them on with prominent announcers, sideline reporters, pregame, SportsCenter segments, etc. In the meantime, ESPN and Fox, it must be said, have been criticized by MLS fans for not doing more to promote the league. And so MLS fans are salty that ESPN is giving Wrexham all this attention. They say, why didn't you show that same love to MLS? This has become a big topic on Twitter the last few days. Pro-Rel folks getting involved. I saw you mixing it up with World Soccer Talk's Kartik Krishnaiyer over the weekend. We haven't discussed it on the pod yet, so what say you about all this, Alexi?
Okay, so first things first. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I have not watched Welcome to Wrexham, which is the companion piece, if you will, to Wrexham. And it is really where a lot of the marketing and the attention has been generated, especially when it comes to the global reach. Two things can exist and coexist, and you can love them. I can appreciate and respect and enjoy watching Wrexham, which I did this weekend, watching them in the FA Cup and seeing that joy, seeing that type of environment and that type of cup game. I can enjoy that, and I can defend and enjoy Major League Soccer or USL or NWSL or anything that happens domestically here. And I think there's a lot of people out there that can do that. I think where you get into some interesting territory is, and what I don't abide by, is when you use Wrexham or use the Wrexham situation as a way to promote what you feel is the proper way to either own soccer or to structure soccer or to support soccer, to watch soccer or to play soccer. Using the Wrexham situation as a way to crap on domestic soccer, whether it's MLS or anything else, for the level of play or the structure of soccer, there's no need to do that, especially because oftentimes many of the arguments are incredibly hypocritical. Okay, and so when you when you look at what Wrexham have done and the way that they have cut through, it's great. It's wonderful. It's incredibly smart. And not surprising in the way that they are catering to either soccer people that are insecure and have this inferiority complex, that want justification for liking soccer and want to be viewed, oftentimes from the outside, as genuine and as authentic and as historic in terms of what they're doing. And there's a lot of people out there that are like that. So enjoy Wrexham, whether it's the actual team that you're watching or whether it's the show that you are watching. But understand that it's not as it's not. There's a romance to it that I get, but the reality of what is happening in terms of, these are rich, famous actors who bought in to this league at a very, $2.5 million or whatever it is. And they are using this as a vehicle to increase the asset value of this property that they have. And yes, from a competitive perspective, that opportunity exists for them to go up and up and up. And how do they do that? They bring in a bunch of new players. They spend a lot of money. So when you scream and yell about, competition and fairness and open systems and meritocracy, it's not really what you're screaming and yelling about. But I love it. I love when people in the United States we're talking about here are into soccer, whether it's domestic soccer or whether it's a small soccer team owned by a couple of famous actors who are using it to promote their asset and to influence their asset in a wonderful way, and are putting out entertainment relative to this team that people obviously like. And this comes on the back of the Ted Lasso situation and all that. Look, people being into soccer for whatever reason is a good thing. I like that. I want that to happen. And we can have arguments and disagreements as to why they're doing it and the right and the wrong way, but there's no right or wrong way ultimately to like the game. If you like the game, like the game. Whatever that entree is into the game, that's a good thing. But when you then start talking about the game and other people have differing opinions or point out your BS or point out your hypocrisy when it comes to the way that you are extolling the virtues of your fandom, don't be surprised when that happens.
My favorite episode of the documentary is the one where Rob and Ryan learn about hooliganism, because the Wrexham fans beat some innocent guy after a game. And so that Rob and Ryan take you through the whole history of hooliganism and kind of, become aware of that whole side of the game. I mean, I felt some real romance there.
Well, but you enjoyed the was 18 episodes or whatever?
Yes.
You did enjoy it.
No, I loved it, actually.
Okay, good.
I thought it was excellent.
What did you love about it?
My favorite of these type documentaries have been the smaller clubs, Sunderland, Leeds, Wrexham, as opposed to when they do Manchester City or Tottenham with those all or nothings, because I do like going to these communities and learning about fans of these smaller clubs and seeing the passion they have. And so I do find that quite endearing.
You find it endearing.
But that's what you really resent, this notion that the United States lacks an authentic soccer culture.
Yeah, I mean, and that's when I was going back and forth, and I want to make sure that I do this correctly and respectfully, because you mentioned Kartik Krishnaiyer, and I've gone back and forth with him a while. He's worked a long time in soccer. Actually, I enjoy following him. He has some interesting takes, lots of stuff that I disagree with, and he's worked, as I said, in the lower levels of soccer before, but. And I'll read you his tweet, because a lot of people had strong reactions to it. He said, "What so many MLS fans don't get is even if they are the top league in the world in terms of the quality of soccer, the lack of authenticity, edginess, story building, community clubs, etc. will always undermine its potential. This sport is about so much more than what's on the field." All of that can be true to a certain extent. But what you are implying there, actually you're not even implying it, you're saying it directly, is that American fans, American leagues, American teams don't have that. Now, yes, there is a much smaller history when it comes to the game, but you can't hold that against anybody. But when it comes, and I'll tell you exactly what I said. I said what you don't get to Kartik or anybody else who says this is how disrespectful and how sanctimonious that ultimately is to MLS fans, because, and I'm just using MLS as an example, but it could apply to any other, leagues or teams out there. You're only 27 years old, and there is plenty of authentic history and passion and stories and community and connection to the fan base out there. And to just completely throw it out, and I get, Kartik, along with many others, they don't like the structure of Major League Soccer. And they want promotion relegation. They want to burn it all down, all right, and start with what they feel is true and authentic and real and genuine. I'm not going to have the pro-rel conversation here. I've told you many, many times my thoughts on that. But just because you don't like the structure of something, I don't think should give you the right to disparage MLS fans. They are as educated, they are as passionate, they are as involved, and they have taken as much ownership in their team and directly and indirectly in their community relative to their team and their sport as anybody around the world. And using the Wrexham situation to, fuel the fire, or as something that you're going to point to as to why, we're not further along, or things that happen, or more importantly, as a compare and contrast, and coming up with the ludicrous belief that somehow because you're not Wrexham or in a Wrexham type of situation and structure, you can't have that type of passion. I think that's lame, and I think that's wrong. I like Kartik because he says interesting things and provocative things. I don't always, as I said, agree with it. And yeah, I'll come to the defense of MLS fans, and I know I wear my heart on my sleeve. And plenty of people disagree with me, and that's fine too.
In Germany,
hold on, wait. But the actual game was an incredible game. It was a fun game to watch. It wasn't as Hollywood as the actor ownership would have scripted.
Ryan Reynolds was at the game.
He was at the game, but it ended up being 3-3 at the end, and so that Hollywood-esque type of ending, which was there in the palm of their hand, and let's be honest, they pissed it away. Even up a man, Wrexham wasn't able to hang on to it. Although they will get another game, and they'll get some more money. Keep in mind that the promotion part of Wrexham, you have to finish first to automatically be promoted, and then the next 6 teams go into this tournament, and the number 1 team of that gets in. So it's not assured that you're going to get it promoted.
They are currently on top of the national. So you did your homework in preparation for this pod, learning about the National League promotion relegation.
I can't believe I did a deep dive into the freaking National League relative to promotion, but this is what it's all about, is the promotion relegation, and both of the actor owners were, and this is so smart by them, and I don't begrudge them using their celebrity to bring attention to their assets here and bring attention to their team. With that now comes higher expectations, and you're hoping to go up the line. And how are you going to go up that line, and how are you going to get up that pyramid and growth in this quote-unquote open type of system? You're going to spend more money.
There you go. Can we move on to Germany?
Go ahead.
In Germany, Bayern Munich, their 3rd straight 1-1 draw since returning from the winter break. This one against Eintracht Frankfurt. And all the teams below them, Union Berlin, Leipzig, Dortmund, Freiburg, all won. So the race is really tightened up. Bayern Munich still on top, but they're only 1 point clear of Union Berlin, 2 points clear of Leipzig, 3 points clear of both Dortmund and Freiburg.
I feel about this time every year, we have this dip and we have this moment, right? And you look at me and I look at you and we say, well, is it really on? Or, hey, could this be a problem? Or, could Bayern falter? Or could this be a moment where we actually do have a title race? And inevitably, we'll hem and haw, and then we'll say, yeah, it's there, it's in the grasp. And then we get on in the next 3 months, the gap happens again. So am I a sucker for believing that there is a title race here in this moment?
Again, without Lewandowski, Bayern don't feel as imperious to me as they have in past seasons. I still think they're going to win it, but I don't think it's the same degree of certainty. Speaking of Dortmund, 2-0 winners away to Leverkusen. A couple of notes here. Sebastian Haller started, which was great to see, completing his comeback from his illness. Gio Reyna did not play in this match. The latest chapter in the Reyna Berhalter saga is that in the press conference leading up to this match, Dortmund boss Edin Terzic said that Gio is still not 100%. He intimated that they're still kind of managing his minutes. A lot of Berhalter supporters seized on that. I saw Matt Doyle, Doug McIntyre firing off tweets about it. They think that this validates Berhalter's approach to Gio at the World Cup, the so-called limited role.
What was it? Do you have the quote there? Because I think that this is important, and not, I don't think too much should be made of it. It's just, it's a coach at a specific moment talking about a player who we know, Gio Reyna, has a long history of injury. I don't know when the last time Gio Reyna was even close. Well, nobody's ever 100%, so I just 90%. All right, because the last time any player was 100%, they were 10 years old. But so if 90% is ready to go, when was the last time that he was 90%? I don't know. And this quote kind of confirms that he is constantly suffering injuries, recovering from injuries, or is injury prone and therefore not at the point that they need him to be.
Here's a Terzic quote. Gio didn't have an easy phase. He had to fight with injuries for almost 1.5 years. He has scored the winning goal twice, is incredibly good in tight spaces, and can make quick decisions. He's not at 100% yet.
Okay, so I don't know when he's going to, like I said, I don't know when he's going to be at 100%. But, again, the whole brouhaha during the World Cup about Gio Reyna, was he injured, wasn't he injured? I think basically at this point, a blanket statement about Gio is that if he's walking, he's injured, okay? Or he's not. He's certainly not 100%. They didn't need him in this game to be that super sub. They got the win that they wanted, but I thought it was interesting to see how specifically they referenced over the last couple of years, and obviously that encompasses the World Cup and what he was. Oh, by the way, another coach who believes that Gio Reyna in his current capacity is not a starter and is a substitute. And yes, he uses him or decides in a certain point not to use him going forward. And I know it's a little apples and oranges when it comes to Dortmund and the U.S. men's national team, but it does provide a little bit more context. But, if you're a Berhalter hater, it doesn't matter what I say or what anybody says out there.
My favorite tweet, and I wish I had it because I want to get the exact wording right. It was perfect. He said something like, the only way to interpret Gio not playing today is that Claudio Reyna must have messed with Edin Terzic's son at some point.
Oh.
That's a reference to this. There is this conspiracy theory out there that
Right.
Berhalter didn't play Gio that much at the World Cup because he's still salty that when Claudio Reyna, as Austin FC sporting director, chose not to retain Sebastian Berhalter. So that's been out there. That's been part of this story.
But isn't that a perfect distillation of what Gio Reyna is going to be like on a consistent basis? It is always going to be attached to him. And again, this is not his fault. There's, he has taken responsibility and has responsibility for things that happened in the World Cup, but not the crazy drama relative to his parents. I'm assuming, and yet it's always going to be a part of that story, and there will be snickers, and there will be, memes, and there will be people making jokes relative to it. Is it fair? No, but again, welcome to life. Life isn't always fair, and again, it just. We have turned, because of this whole Gio Reyna, Reyna's and Berhalter situation, we have turned what should have been just an incredibly optimistic and positive and exciting moment in soccer and U.S. men's history coming out of this World Cup and turning this corner to the 2026 World Cup, and a moment of joy relative to the future of this team, including Gio Reyna and this incredible group. And we have turned it into a cynical and a toxic and just a horrible moment of soccer national mystery. So well done, us. All right, Mosse, what else?
In France, PSG hosted Hans this weekend. They were up 1-0 thanks to a goal by Neymar. And then last kick of the game, young Folarin Balogun scores an equalizer for Hans. Balogun, you might recall, is a young man who was born in the United States to Nigerian parents and then moved to England at an early age. He is eligible for all three countries. He has represented England and the U.S. at youth level. It's unclear who he's going to represent at senior level. A lot of U.S. fans think he could be the missing piece because he is a center forward, a position of need. And he's an Arsenal player on loan and doing very well in Ligue 1 this season.
And first off, just incredible touch, incredible skill, incredible speed, and this is a wonderful prospect. And again, the events, that have happened over the last couple of weeks with the loss of, well, obviously Gregg Berhalter no longer the coach, for the foreseeable future. Ernie Stewart gone, and Brian McBride. Say what you will about what the successes and the failures. One of the successes has been attracting dual nationals. In this case, tri-nationals. I guess it would be. And so, whoever comes in has to make sure they pick up the mantle and not let these players go by the wayside if there is an opportunity. And if they want to play for the U.S., you got to make sure that you're lobbying. You got to make sure that you are recruiting and living up to what Gregg, Ernie, and Brian did. Because, again, from that perspective, they were incredibly successful.
Yeah, believe me, I know only too well. Jim Harbaugh's NFL dalliances have murdered Michigan's recruiting, so I know how having unsettled leadership can affect your ability to acquire. But no, that's a good point. I mean, the U.S. right now does not have a sporting director, GM, or manager, so I don't know who would even be putting in a call to Balogun at this point in time.
And that's not good. Like, time is of the essence, maybe. Who knows? Maybe he's like, well, they're not calling me, and I'm not hearing anything. And look, there might be stuff going on behind the scenes, but I know everybody's saying, and we're going to talk a little bit later in the pod a little bit more about the U.S. Situation. But okay, well, look, he plays a position of need, and obviously he's really, really good at it. And scoring a goal like that, and he took it. It was right down the gut. He had a wonderful first touch. It slowed down nicely for him. He used the speed to create that distance and that separation. Then it slowed down nicely for him to go around the goalkeeper and to still have the composure to finish it off. So it's got a lot of nice things that the U.S. certainly could use.
PSG, by the way, only a 3-point lead over Lens at the top of the Ligue 1 table.
Gee, I hope they pull it out.
Also in France, Lille lost 1-0 away to Nice. Timothy Weah did start on the wing in this game. Mentioned there's only...
Finally.
We're taping this on a Monday. The transfer window closes tomorrow. There's been rumors about him potentially leaving, but he gets a start this weekend at his preferred position, so you wonder if that calms the waters there. We'll see what happens with Weah in the next 24 hours or so. In Spain, Barcelona 1-0 winners away to Girona. Pedri scored the only goal in his 100th appearance. The bad news for Barcelona, Ousmane Dembele came off injured. He's going to be out several weeks. Real Madrid, 0-0 draw at home against Real Sociedad. Real Madrid actually played quite well in this game. Vinicius was electric. They created a million chances. They just couldn't put one in. That means Barcelona now with a 5-point lead atop the La Liga table. The other big news in Spain, the draw for the Copa del Rey semifinals took place. Real Madrid and Barcelona drawn against each other. The semifinals are 2 legs, so we're going to have 2 extra Clásicos on top of the La Liga game they're still going to play. So in a span of about a month here, we're going to have 3 El Clásicos, reminiscent of the spring of 2011 when they famously met 4 times in a span of like 2 weeks in the Copa del Rey final, La Liga, and the Champions League semis. That's considered perhaps the high point of the rivalry from an intensity standpoint. You don't have the same personalities right now. You had Mourinho and Pep then, Messi, Ronaldo, but nevertheless, having them play 3 times in a short period will be interesting.
Is it good?
Yeah.
It's good.
Absolutely.
So Super League is bad, but watching Real Madrid and Barcelona play multiple times is good. Right? I mean, come on, man. All right, it's good. It is good. Everybody wants to watch it. Why do they want to watch it? Because they're 2 of the great teams playing against each other on a consistent basis. All right.
You could only watch one game, Barcelona, Real Madrid, or Wrexham against some other National League team. Finally, in Italy, Napoli continued to roll. They beat Roma 2-1. Osimhen scored first. El Shaarawy equalized. And then Giovanni Simeone with a late winner. Napoli now 13 points clear at the top of the Serie A table. So as we've talked about, this is done and dusted. They are going to win their first Scudetto since the Diego Maradona-inspired triumph back in 1990.
Yeah, I mean, now it's just a question of where people are going to finish relative to Champions League, including, obviously, the deduction that has really, really put a problem on Juventus going forward. So give it to Napoli now. Scudetto.
That is it.
Okay, let's take another quick break. When we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that point in the pod when we take your questions out there, and sometimes you send them on the the platforms, the social media platforms out there. You can use that hashtag Ask Alexi. And again, our Twitter handle and all of our handles out there are SOTU with Alexi. Or you can call in, as some people did this week, at 657-549-2297. That is our State of the Union podcast hotline, 657-549-2297. Yeah, you can see it over here. Well, you would be able to see it if, we paid our electricity bill over here at Fox, but one of our panels is out, as I mentioned previously in the pod. But it's okay. You can figure it out. Again, 657-549-2297. What do we got this week, Mosse?
A couple of voicemails. Let's hear the first one right now.
Hi, Alexi and Mosse. Jason here from St. Louis. Alexi, really appreciate your thoughts about and unvarnished about the prospect, about the new club that's kicking off here in St. Louis in 2 months. I know you were wowed by the stadium. Just want to get your take on the prospects for the club this season. Number two, just read that Cindy Parlacone said that the timetable, she initially said this summer for both sporting director and after Stuart's departure and new manager. But she just rephrased and said, let's start with the sporting director first, and then maybe by the Women's World Cup, the actual men's manager. My question to you is, I know you guys are talking about Bielsa and all these guys. Why not just we got nothing to do for at least a year. Why? Maybe is it worth waiting even into 2024 just to see what vacancies arise? I'm almost tempted to wait out Pep Guardiola, who just re-upped with Man City. That's through 2025. I guess that would end in May 2025. But if you told me we were going to hire Guardiola, even though it's 1 year prior to the World Cup, I would take that in a heartbeat. He could, I would take him with only 6 months to go. Why not wait a year and see what happens? Thanks so much.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jason, from St. Louis. And just to reiterate, yeah, you got a good thing going there when it comes to St. Louis City SC. I had a wonderful time out there in St. Louis, and they walked me through the incredible downtown stadium and the attached training facilities and offices and everything over there. Miss Kendall, one of your owners, was nice enough to actually give me a personal tour, and we went around with Lutz Pfannenstahl, the sporting director, and Bradley Carnell, the head coach. And it's just an amazing thing that you have down there. So everything in terms of the packaging of this team is wonderful. The actual product within that package, that's up to the the brains that are putting that soccer team on the field. And I think, as I said before, if you are even in the running for a playoff position, I think that will be considered a success. I think safe money is that you will not make the playoffs this year. You have not done anything even close to what an LAFC did coming out of the gates or an Atlanta United, and it's probably by design. I get it. I understand that, and so I think the biggest star is going to be this stadium, this facility, and this feel-good moment of having a team. And this will be kind of a soft launch of the actual competitive team. And St. Louis likes winners like anybody else and will demand, and there's a wonderful history when it comes to soccer, will demand a better team. But I just don't see St. Louis competing at the levels of others starting in this inaugural year. When it comes to the national team, and Mosse, we've talked about this before, this concept of waiting, right? And on the surface, it sounds good, but we all know that a national team coach and a national team program, okay, has very limited opportunity to have players in camp. And so as a coach, your opportunity to literally coach these players is incredibly limited, and you have to accept that and to a certain extent embrace that. And so the more time that you take, the less opportunities. We've already talked about Gold Cup that's coming this summer, Nations League that's coming this summer, some really interesting friendlies that are coming later on this year. And so the farther you kick it, that can down the road, yes, you still keep yourself available and open to somebody coming along that, in this case, Jason feels like a Pep or somebody else. But there's the other part of me that says, just find somebody that you believe in, okay? Find somebody that you believe can take this team from now and build it into the best version of itself, as opposed to a mercenary coming in late in the game, as talented as they may be. And so what you really have to decide is, how good is this person that you are going to hire now relative to, insert your name, coming in and having a limited and very limited amount of time to put their stamp on the team. Because, while insert player or insert coach here, I don't know, let's put Jim Curtin or something like that. What is the difference between a Jim Curtin who, and I'm just using him as an example, has this team for the next 3.5 years, getting ready for the 26th World Cup, and a Pep Guardiola who comes in, let's say, the summer of 2025 and has, a handful of games getting ready for the summer? How good is Pep that you'll even take that? And I know there's a lot of people saying there, well, it's Pep. Well, it's not as simple. And I guarantee you, as much as Pep has an ego like any of us out there, if Pep was sitting here, he would explain that the difference is perceived as opposed to the reality between a Pep and a Jim Curtin. And I know there's people out there that their minds are exploding right now that I'm even putting Jim Curtin in the same sentence as a Pep Guardiola. Maybe even Jim Curtin's listening and would say the same thing. But I do believe that it's the abilities and the difference between a Pep and a Jim Curtin are much smaller and much less than people and many of us believe. And it comes from where you play, where you're from, all of that kind of stuff that shapes and also at times warps the perception relative to what the reality ultimately is.
And by the way, there were reports the last few days that Bielsa is now a candidate for the U.S. I didn't, to be honest, it's Telemundo, I think. I didn't see that with any of the people I trust, the Doug McIntyres of the world. So I'm
well,
inclined...
you stand for Bielsa, so would that be a good thing for you?
That would be great.
Well, good for you, but is that a good thing for the national team? If you were making the decision, is Bielsa the right fit? Nobody's denying that he is an interesting coach and potentially is really, really good. And then at times can be really, really bad and comes with plenty of baggage. But is he the right coach for the U.S. men's national team at this particular moment?
I think he could be.
Really?
Yeah. But again, I'm inclined not to believe it.
Oh.
Because as we discussed, who right now would even be reaching out to him? I don't know. I guess Ernie Stewart is still there, but yeah, I don't know.
Again, the lack of somebody actually being in charge right now, that it doesn't preclude people in the federation from reaching out, and there are certainly leadership out there that could do that, but with nothing in place, whose job specifically is to do that, it makes it a little harder.
Incidentally, the Bielsa Everton situation fell apart because Bielsa told him that he wanted to install one of his assistants with the senior team, and he wanted to coach Everton's under-21 team for the rest of this season, which is the most Bielsa thing ever. It makes no sense. They're in a relegation battle.
I would have kicked his ass out of the interview. I said, go to the airport. I'll drive you to the airport. I mean, it is Bielsa, but it's such a dick move.
Yep. We have another voicemail.
Hey, Alexi and Mosse, this is Gregg from Memphis, Tennessee. Just finished listening to the podcast, and I am calling in response to the other Gregg from New York. Sounds like a small man to play the role of a schmuck and complaining about your career and effect on the game. He sounds like an unreflective man to not appreciate what you've contributed to U.S. soccer, because I am in my late 50s, and I played soccer as a young man, and I remember you as a player, and I remember the state of U.S. soccer when you played, and I remember the bias against U.S. players and the low expectations for our national team. And the fact that, well, first, it's shaky ground to compare players of the past to players of today, because the game has changed so much. And it's especially tenuous to compare defenders to attacking players. But I can remember the bias against U.S. players and the fact that you were able to break into the European game. And I think especially at that time, Italian soccer was rather closed. And I think you and Reyna both were able to, Miola was the other player. And the fact that you were able to do that, I think is more of an accomplishment than Gio Reyna breaking into the German game in this time. I appreciate your voice. I appreciate you being willing to take a stand. I appreciate that in your role as a general manager, I think it was, for the LA Galaxy, and in your other roles, you're the type of individual that does not seem to shy away from making decisions, and those people move the game forward and make the game better. So I would never boo you. I honestly am very appreciative of. I have my thing is U.S. soccer. It's not even logical or rational. I just am.
All right. So he gets a little cut off there at the end, but you get the gist.
That was the Irishman of phone calls. My God. I mean, we appreciate it, but producer Sean, we might have to institute a time limit for future phone calls.
Oh, my goodness. Well, first off, thank you for the kind words, Greg. And, look, as I've said time and time again, it makes me incredibly proud that someone like Gio Reyna has not had to go through the crap that my generation went through, or, by the way, Gio Reyna's father went through, okay? And guess what? It was made easier for me by the previous generation, Generation 2. I would love to see how some of these players fared. And, this is that past versus today type of thing, which is dangerous. But if they didn't have those pathways and didn't have those opportunities, would they still be able to rise to the top? Would they be able to hack it? Would they be able to find a pathway through that wilderness? And it was a wilderness back then. And look, it doesn't mean that I or others weren't given opportunities and benefits along the way. Again, sometimes that the previous generation had established. But, yeah, I mean, the opportunities that Gio and others have, that's a good thing. That's progress. That's evolution. So, thank you, Greg. We had a number of calls. I wasn't, we didn't talk last week about the boo thing, other than it was an interesting and fun thing to talk about. It wasn't designed to elicit people calling in and defending me. I certainly appreciate it. I don't need it. Whether it's, you're certainly welcome to boo Greg or anybody else when it comes to me out there. But it's very nice of you to say those nice things. But I think what you're doing is just confirming what I believe all along, in that we've come a long way, baby, as the saying goes. And I think it's important to recognize how far we've come. But I'm not holding to account this generation for understanding and respecting and even knowing all of the crap that we've been through to get there. That's not what evolution is, to be quite honest with you. It's that they grow and live and evolve in a much better type of situation than anything that came before. And I don't need their, to be quite honest, I don't need their recognition or respect or anything like that. That's not what this is about. So, do we have anything else?
Now, let me say this to last week's caller, Greg from New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I assume he's a Giants or Jets fan. The Empire State Building lighting up in Eagles colors last night is the most embarrassing moment in the 400-year history of New York City.
Wow.
Whoever came up with that idea should be fired.
Wow.
Henry Hudson is turning over in his grave. I cannot believe they did that. I'm sure Greg, wherever he is, was outraged as well.
Well, on that, I think you guys can agree. And so, yeah, I mean, that was nuts. I mean, when you hit send on that, I guess there's a point. At some point, you have to hit send on approving that. Is there nothing that goes, hey, this could be a problem? Especially in New York. Oh, my goodness. Hey, listen, I love the fact that people are calling in and that people are reacting either to things that we say or the things that the callers say. I mean, it is designed to give you a voice. It is designed to give you an opportunity in a different way to be a part of this show. And it's designed to get, people talking and thinking. And that Greg from last week was able to talk about something even, in a provocative way or in a way that I might disagree with or that others can be critical with, that's a good thing. And Greg this week, choosing to defend me, which was very, very nice. I will say that, and this goes back to what we talked about last week, where a reaction in a setting or in a crowd is very, very different than the reaction individually. I think you're seeing some of that in terms of the response here. Now, don't get me wrong. Producer Sean, I'm sure, deleted a bunch of even more heavy-handed and critical and mean types of messages that people left. But there were a bunch of good ones, too. So anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll finish up our show with one for the road. All right, welcome back. It is the end of our show, and at the end of each and every one of our shows, I give you my one for the road. Last week we talked about my kids, and I don't talk a whole lot about my family or my kids, but evidently people were interested in that. I'm not going to talk about my kids or my family on this one. I'm actually going to talk about something that is certainly near and dear to me when it comes to Major League Soccer. And look, I love Major League Soccer, warts and all. I could be the first person to raise my hand and recognize that it is certainly not perfect on and off the field. But someone this week sent me a tweet asking about the storylines and the story that is Major League Soccer and their worry and fear and criticism of Major League Soccer relative to what they feel is an inability to talk about the stories. And I think that there is some validity in that criticism. Keep in mind that the platforms and the opportunities out there, because soccer is still not king, and Major League Soccer is still not king when it comes to soccer, even in the United States. You have to bite and scratch for each and every opportunity to tell those stories. But this comes on the back of the storytelling that is Wrexham, and what a wonderful job they have done in telling that story, and therefore enhancing the brand. And that's what it is all about. And so a lot of people equating, well, why can't MLS tell these types of compelling stories on a continual basis? I would argue that there has been plenty of storytelling over the years. That you can't find it doesn't mean it's not there, but that in and of itself certainly is problematic. The greater story, as we get ready to kick off yet another season of Major League Soccer, is that, and I mentioned 27 years, 27 years of MLS, and it's just come and gone like that. And yet when you look at this body of work, both on and off the field, and what has been created, you can't help but, even if you are the biggest anti-MLSer out there, recognize what has happened. They have created the most successful professional soccer league in American and Canadian history. They have created decades of jobs for men and women, obviously on the field from a playing perspective, but many more off the field in terms of working in the industry, and this industry that has grown so much, that never existed when I was growing up, and certainly before that. They have introduced new pathways that we've talked about when it comes to soccer. And yes, we can argue about the structure of those pathways, but it's undeniable that those pathways are leading to so many more opportunities for young players out there to star either locally, nationally, and internationally going forward that have not been in there in the past. They have introduced this whole era of, we talked about St. Louis in the previous segment, of soccer-specific stadia out there, and how important those have been not just to the business of these clubs, but to the communities themselves and the markets in which they were in, and how they have become this mecca and this cathedral, if you will, for not just soccer people, but people that are into their community and into their sport. They have birthed this generation of MLS supporters groups and all that entails, both the good and the bad, but ultimately and in totality, an incredible good that see themselves through the lens of not just soccer, but oftentimes of their MLS team. And you could apply this to USL, and you can certainly apply this to NWSL, but they see themselves through their league and through their team, and all of their actions and the way they talk and the way they act and the way they dress, all of that is relative to that. And in terms of, from a business perspective, we can talk about the appreciation of these teams and what they were once worth, and how in the beginning of the aughts, at the turn of the century, if you will, you could buy an MLS team for, I don't know, $5 million, even less at a certain point. Really should have done it back then, and now the going rate just for the actual expansion fee is over $300 million. And MLS becoming a player in the transfer market. Each and every day we are talking about, players. We've talked about them today that are either coming or going. Now, are they at the level of leagues around the world that, by the way, have had a 100-year head start? No, not yet. But the amount of space that they have gained and the speed in which they have done that bodes well for the future. So, look, again, I know that this is La Cosa Nostra. This is our thing, and this is my league. And so I wear that on my sleeve. And yes, I have played in the league. I have worked in the league. I have worked and continue to work for Fox here and previously ESPN, two major broadcasters when it comes to the league. And so I have that direct connection. But this is something that will never go away, and it deserves defending. And so when you see me either sparring on Twitter with people or here on the pod or anywhere else, even in the bar or wherever, talking about people and calling people out and making them justify their stance, even though I find it ridiculous, and in doing so defending Major League Soccer, it's because I feel it's worth defending. And I feel that it has a place in the sports landscape, and it has had to, like I said before, bite and scratch for that place and grab a hold of it. And it still has a long way to go. And again, it's not perfect. And those that want to tear it down, those that, that feel that the most successful soccer league in history when it comes to the U.S. and Canada isn't worthy of defending because of the structure that it employs, which, by the way, has enabled it to be successful and to keep in business. That is something that I don't agree with, and that comes out in that defense. And we are on the precipice here of yet another MLS season, and a very, very different season, and an exciting season. Somebody asked me, what are some of the things to be looking forward to? And look, we're going to get much deeper into all the different things that are happening when it comes to Major League Soccer, but just here are 5 things that I think you should be looking for as we get ready for MLS. League's Cup break. The league has taken a month off to play this new tournament. All the teams from Major League Soccer and all the teams from League MX are going to be involved. That in and of itself is incredible and unique, even unique around the world. And so I think that's going to be a talking point. The Apple deal, which we've talked about so much, and congratulations to now 31 new people, by the way, that have been added to that broadcast team. It's it's a pretty big broadcast team, including our friend Keith Costigan. The St. Louis intro, we talked about that earlier in the show. I just think that, when you have an expansion team and what St. Louis has meant to soccer in the past with its history, that's going to be big. From a specific perspective, Atlanta United. Keep an eye on Atlanta United. This was the team that came in, big guns, won an MLS Cup, really did things and fundamentally changed things, and then lost their way. And now with the addition of Garth Lagerwey coming over from Seattle, and he does not suffer fools, and he is going to want to use that opportunity and power he has to bring this team back. Can they rebound? And then the summer transfer window is always big, and as I mentioned, MLS being involved in that now to a degree that they haven't been in the past, that's always going to be fun. Anything before we go, Mosse?
That's it.
Nothing. You didn't want to say anything about your friend Keith Costigan?
Yeah, I'll text him after the pod. No, I'm very happy to hear that.
It's great. It's great. And a lot of different people out there are getting opportunities and broadcast opportunities. And it goes back to what we said. This ecosystem that we have developed, and I know people love to crap on it, but it has provided opportunities for a lot of people and more people. And there might be somebody listening right now or watching right now that wants to work in soccer. And when in the past it was, well, I want to work in sports and I'll use soccer as a stepping stone to get someplace else. There's a whole generation that's growing up right now that wants to be in soccer, that wants to work in soccer, either in front offices or broadcasting or anything else out there. And there are more opportunities now.
And on the MLS point, there's a pretty good article recently on ESPN, Kyle Bonagura, I believe, talking about how many MLS players were at the World Cup, how many different countries had an MLS player, and sort of positing the notion that MLS is now clearly a top 10 league in the world, that it's hard to argue if you look at all the different metrics.
Yep. Well, it's still got a long way to go, and you don't rest on your laurels, and there's still plenty of things for us to critique and to criticize, and for plenty of people that just don't like MLS for whatever reasons. We've talked about them before. They will have plenty of fodder going forward. That doesn't change. All right, this is our first pod of the week. We will do another one that will be out on Thursday, as Mosse mentioned, the close of the window and all sorts of things that are happening. And who knows? Given the nature of the American soccer wars with the Z, you never know what else will happen here in the next few days. But we will talk to you again at that point. Keep reviewing and downloading and rating and subscribing and doing all the different things that you do. And again, our State of the Union podcast hotline is 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. We will talk again later on in the week. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.